So my plan for today is to deal with all of these spare plants that I have. I already planted out quite a bit of the plants I've started this year, but I have some plants that are looking good that I didn't want to throw out, so they've just been left in these micro soil blocks. But if I want them to keep growing, I have to pot them up. And I always think to myself, I'm starting too many seeds, but if I get more plants than I need, I'll just throw them out. But then I always end up saving all of them. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm starting out with these lettuce plants. So the lettuce, I don't think they're doing that well. And you can see the rest of them. It's been quite a long time that they've been in this tray, and they haven't really grown on as I would like. So I'm throwing most of them out. I only potted up one of them, and the other ones in the tray that I potted up the plant in are plants that I've potted up before, but the lettuce didn't do well at all, and actually later on I ended up throwing out even the ones that I potted on. I think maybe they got dampening off. Maybe that's what was doing it. And here I have some broccoli and some lamb's lettuce. You can see like the bottom leaves are yellowing and drying out. So I'm going to remove all of those leaves before I pot it up. And the lamb's lettuce is doing well. And the last one is Savoy cabbage. So I'm starting out by sterilizing my scissors. I don't do this all the time. I try to remember, but I forget sometimes. And then I'm just cutting off all the yellowing leaves before I do anything else. And all of these plants are in micro soil blocks. And I'm going to pot them up into larger soil blocks, the mini 4s. I have my little helper with me today, so she is basically just supervising the work right now, making sure that I don't forget to register everything on my spreadsheet. She's trying to draw attention to that right now. And then I'm just moving on to the next tray. These are lettuces that are actually doing a lot better, but I don't think I will be potting up the lettuce. I think they are fine to go out in this size. So I'm just moving on. It's basically different types of brassicas that I'm potting up today. The lamb's lettuce that I showed before, I put out in the garden, and it will be fine planted out in that size. And this is Napa cabbage, the next ones that I'm working on. Just like before, I'm removing all the yellowing lower leaves, cleaning up the plants a little bit. And if there's any seedlings that I'm noticing are very small or not thriving, I'm throwing them away. So the first one I picked up was very small compared to the other ones. And maybe it's just because the other plants are shading it out, but I just don't want to pot up spare plants that aren't the healthiest. The next ones are these larger radishes that aren't doing well at all. So these I just threw out. And then I'm registering everything I'm doing on my spreadsheet so that I don't forget. I always think that I'm going to remember everything, but in just a few days, I don't really remember anything at all because there's so much to do with the seedlings and preparing the garden. So it's better to just write everything down while I'm doing it and it's fresh in my brain. And these are cabbages that are doing really well, actually. Only a few of the lower leaves are yellowing, but almost all of the plants are looking really good. So I bought some new trays that I'm testing out, but this batch of soil blocks got a lot of white mold on them. I'm thinking maybe because the sides are so high, the ventilation isn't good enough. So we'll see if I end up liking these trays. And then I'm mixing up some potting soil with some fertilizer and some vermiculite, and this is what I'm going to use to make my soil blocks. And the potting mix isn't sterile, so I will be pouring boiling hot water on top of this. I do have a little bit of an issue with fungus gnats, so that's why I'm trying to, it's not going to sterilize the soil, but have it maybe kill a few of the eggs and stuff that can be in the soil. The soil has been outside on my balcony, so I've noticed when I bring it inside that the fungus gnat population gets bigger. So that's why I'm trying. by pouring this hot water on top. And I'm mixing it actually while it's quite hot as well, but I have this glove on, so it's not burning my hands, but it is fairly warm actually. And then for the first blocks, I actually used the wrong attachment. It comes with like a lot of different types of, I don't know, hole punchers. And I wanted the square ones, but I accidentally just made the normal ones. So, and the blocks just turned out so well that I didn't want to start over. So I just made the square holes myself. And I mean, it wasn't that hard to do. So that's a tip if somebody doesn't have the square attachments, you can just make them yourselves. And then it's really easy to pot up the micro soil blocks when you've prepared the holes square. You just place the micro soil block into the larger soil block, and that's it. And then I was using the tape that I'd used on the trays to mark out what seedlings they are, but I ended up going back later on and changing out the tape for just plant labels instead, because the tape, I mean, I feel like it was hard to tell later on what plant is what, because the tape could end up between two and soil blocks, and then I wouldn't really know what is what. Can't always tell with the brassicas. A lot of them look pretty similar. And on the next tray of soil blocks, I made soil blocks with the square um, puncher or hole maker. I don't know what you call it. So that was a lot easier. I didn't have to make the holes myself, and the soil blocks fit perfectly. And with the first one, it was a bit more work because some of them I didn't make the hole deep enough or wide enough. So just making it with the attachment like it's supposed to makes it a lot easier. This is broccoli, and they're quite tiny actually when I'm potting them up, but I just feel like it's a good time to pot them up when they are this small, because the soil blocks don't really have a lot of nutrients, so they need a bit of a boost. And I mean, it doesn't get really too early as long as they look healthy. And I was just placing them in the blocks, but then I took them out and put them in on their sides instead. And that buries a bit of the stem so they aren't as tall and reaching for the light. It makes the plants a little bit more stubby. And I think that is a good method to avoid having seedlings that are really tall and reaching for the light. This broccoli variety is called Marathon. It's the first time I'm growing this variety. It's a F1 hybrid. So we'll see if I like it. Hopefully we can get a harvest from it so we can evaluate if we like it or not. And now that I've potted the last one, I'm putting them under the grow lights. And here is a type of shallot. There I have some peppers growing. And here are the last ones, the first tray that I potted up of seedlings. They look really good. And then I'm sowing my celery is in the first block. And then this is arugula or rocket that I'm growing. And I'm actually multi-sowing these, so there's about 3 seeds in each block. And I think that works great, even with the tiny space. They don't like compete with each other. They seem to like growing closely together. So that's how I will be planting arugula or rocket from now on. And because these seeds need light to germinate, I'm not going to cover them with anything. I'm just going to push them down into the soil so they make good contact. And here's the beets and the peas that I sowed a few days ago. They're all coming up, but they have this white mold. And I think this is caused by over fertilizing the soil. So I put quite a lot of fertilizer in, and I've noticed that this usually happens when I have too much. And then just a few days later, this is the arugula or rocket and the celery. The celery hasn't come up yet, but the arugula is doing great. And on that same day, I actually sowed a new batch of lettuce and some kale, some other brassicas, and I think also some pak choi. So this is that tray over here. And it's starting to put on some growth. It's looking well, I think. And this is cauliflower on the last row. Looking good. And then these got a bit leggy because I closed the window. So I think it was a bit too warm. So I don't know. I think I'm going to pot them up soon. And a new update on the peas. They are looking well, but the beets actually all just fell over and died. I think it was just too much fertilizer. And I don't know if it's the fertilizer or the mold, but they didn't make it. And then a few days later, this is the celery, and they're all looking really good. Most of them have come up. So this was a little update on my plants and seedlings right now. Thank you for joining me.